And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you to start digging in and talking about the power of Restore Non-Professional.
Yeah, thank you, Janice. I appreciate that. It was interesting. We were having a conversation with a couple of different healthcare practitioners. I guess it was a couple months ago now, and we were having this conversation. And they said, well, I don't really know if I want to sell Restore Non-Professional, because isn't that half of the value of normal Restore? And the answer is no, not in the least. It's incredibly robust, and there are a couple of ingredients that have decreased value, but like vitamin D as an example, and we'll get into that. But overall, 95% of everything that's actually in Restore Professional is actually in the Restore Veggie. And we recently, one of the things that highlighted that is we recently ran a trial with a collegiate, very competitive tri-team. So 19 to 24-year-olds, peak health, prime health, and they are racing collegiately. And so we couldn't actually give them a professional because it could actually trigger an adverse analytical finding with either the pregnenolone or the colostrum. And so we couldn't actually give those things to them. So we gave them normal Restore, and we actually found that their overall recovery, their performance, and their energy increased significantly. And some of the data even showed that it was, between 16 and 18% improvement. And that was off of regular Restore. So we really started to think about all of this, and we thought, okay, well, how do we better tell the story? Because it started off with Restore Professional, and Dr. Tennant said, okay, well, we have these people who are critically ill, and they need adrenal support, they need hormone support, they need methylation support, and we need everything in one bucket. And so when we actually went through and did that, then Restore Professional was created. And then we said, well, wait a minute, not everybody needs all of those things. Let's see what else we have. And we said, well, actually, we can pull out the pregnenolone, the lithium orotate, and the SAMe, and the colostrum in the whey, and that left us with normal Restore. And then we said, okay, well, actually, the whole family can take it up to 5. We called it family for a little over a year. That didn't actually go over so well. And we're like, well, wait a minute. This isn't just a family formula. It's not just for kids. This is incredibly robust. And so we've had a couple of trials that have gone through that. And we started to think, okay, well, how else can we present that? And so this training specifically is going to discuss the differences in Restore, the ingredients, and let's dive into that. So, we're going to talk about the requirements of cells, why nutritions matter, Restore overview, really which Restore is best for you, why the 3 different things matter, the methylated and bioavailable ingredients, cofactors, GMO versus non-GMO. It's really interesting too. I've been doing quite a bit of market research on some of the other nutritional powders and shakes that are out there recently. And they all seem to say the same thing. They say the same thing that we say with Restore. I think that they even tell a better story. The challenge is let's just be honest here. But the challenge is when you look at the label and you actually look at the ingredients, the products are synthetic. And so they're not going to have the same effect. And nobody is telling that story. And so we're trying to figure out different ways that we can actually tell that. So then we have our energizing ingredients. We'll dive right back in again to Restore versus Restore Professional and get into this. So everybody here knows that this is more than a job for us. It's our passion. We talk about this every day. Restore has changed my life, my wife's life, and our kids' lives. My kids actually end up with a little bit of this Restore, not the professional, but actual Restore. And they take that daily, and it seems to help them. What's interesting is that I have a 4-year-old, and her teachers, her preschool teacher, and her behavioral and speech therapist all noticed a significant difference. And if she's not taking the Restore, everything in its methylated form, they ask what's going on and what's changed in her diet and what's changed at home. And everything else is the same, except she may not have been drinking her shake for, 10 or 11 days. So we focus on making the highest quality natural ingredients the most bioavailable form. family owned and operated, and we really believe that ingredients matter. So when we think about why we need these things in the first place, again, you've seen some of this material already, but what I want to emphasize is that this is not Restore Professional. This is Restore. So this is like the robust formula. And when we're constantly wearing our cells out, we have to create new cells. Dr. Tennant will say, hey, we get cones in our retina and replace the lining of our gut every 2 to 3 days. We replace our skin every 6 weeks and our liver every 8 weeks. Chronic disease occurs when we lose the ability to make new healthy cells. This is the challenge. So what are we actually putting into our body to help create those new healthy cells? And Restore Professional was originally created by Dr. Tennant because he said, well, hey, look, I don't see anything else on the market like this. It's annoying to have all those extra bottles, those pills, right? I think he had 72 different bottles. And we priced it out to do a cost analysis to purchase everything in its closest form that we could find on Amazon. And it was about $1,800. And so we thought, okay, well, we shouldn't have to dive into all of these things, but how can we better tell this story? The bottom line is that nutrition matters. And you say, well, why does nutrition matter? Well, the body doesn't fix damaged cells, it creates new healthy ones, and nutrition provides those building blocks. So if you're building a house, you need the windows, the doors, all of the wiring for the electricity. You need like the texture on the walls, the paint. You need everything, right, that actually goes with that. Well, our cells need the same thing. So we need the energy, which Dr. Tennant will say that it's negative 50 moles of energy. We need the amino acids, which are the inside of the cells. So we need something to help with that. We need the fats for the outside of the cells, which are the phospholipids and the fatty acids. We need the vitamins and minerals to help with our metabolic processes. We need oxygen, of course, that helps with energy as well. We need fuel, so fats and glucose, a sewage system or something to help get rid of those waste proteins, a lymphatic system, as some would reference. And then something to help protect us from illness, huge right now when we start talking about everything that's happening in the viral world to help support our immune systems. And then something to help remove those toxic substances. Dan, maybe you can give a clinic on that here. So when we talk about all of the things that we're actually putting in Restore, we need all of those things across the board. And when you look at some of the other folks on the market, whether it's Athletic Greens, Kachava, whatever it might be, they do a fantastic job advertising that. And they start to tell the story, but when you actually get into it, products aren't bioavailable, and then our bodies can't actually process them. So when we look at Restore, and this is Restore, not professional, but Restore, we have the highest quality ingredients to support cellular energetics, meaning that we carry energy directly to the cell, fuel the cellular functions, and create new healthy cells to support optimal health and wellness. It's a comprehensive and synergistic formula. So you can purchase the ingredients by themselves, but you want to make sure that you have the appropriate cofactors present. They're all biologically active ingredients. So when we're looking at things, it's not just buying niacin, it's buying NADH, which is the form that our bodies are actually going to process. So it's kind of like the fast pass at Disneyland. We'll give you that. You can go do what you want, come back, and then you don't have to wait in line or go through all of the extra steps. 20 patented, clinically studied nutraceutical grade ingredients. We'll get into that. And then, what are we talking about here? What's the practical application? Well, the practical application is that you don't have to take 70 pills, right? You take one scoop, simplifies your day. You have everything that you need to create the new healthy cells in one bucket, and then you move on with your life, and everything else that you're actually putting in is just additional fuel for the day. So let's talk about this a little bit. We have several different types of Restore. We have a Restore Professional formula, which is our professional whey blend. That has all the goodies, right? I call that the puppy chow, right? It has the colostrum, it has the whey. It has prebiotics and dietary fiber. It has a hormone support with pregnenolone. Now, pregnenolone is a parent hormone to DHEA, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. So it's going to help balance the hormone balance, and really helps with adrenal support, and somebody who might have some significant stress issues. And then we also have the Pro that has immune support with colostrum. And so colostrum really helps with active recovery, muscle fatigue. It really helps boost that. It really helps with boosting immune system. So if we look at folks who need that adrenaline support, who need immune support, and really need anything and everything that they can to help them process what's going into their bodies, that's why we have the Restore Whey Professional, and the SAMe and the lithium orotate on that. So SAMe is a master methylator. And then the lithium orotate also helps with that, and then mood stabilization. The challenge was, we said, okay, well, wait, there are some people that actually can't tolerate dairy. So even though the whey that we have in the professional is hypoallergenic, it's cold processed, cold filtered, the colostrum doesn't actually have any lactate in it, so it's not going to deal with people with lactose intolerance. We still said, okay, well, we need to have a veggie formula. And Dr. Tennant said, well, wait, we still need some people that need some hormone support. So let's go ahead and keep the pregnenolone. We still need additional methylation support. So let's go ahead and use the SAMe and lithium orotate. And then he said, well, wait a minute. There are other people that don't actually need that, and they just need basic maintenance. Like, how can we actually put something in here for that? And that's what we have, and what we're talking about today is Restore. Not basic, not family, just Restore, non-professional. They all have 22 grams of protein. They all have prebiotics and dietary fiber. They all have amino acids and omega-3s. So when we start talking about the ingredients and what's actually in here, we are using whole vitamin C. A lot of what you'll find is that most folks are going to use ascorbic acid, and ascorbic acid is a piece of the pie. So if you think about vitamin C, you actually need vitamin C as a whole pie, right? And so that's made up of bioflavonoids, polyphenols, ascorbic acid. We like to use non-GMO ascorbic acid because we don't want the genetically modified organisms that are actually running through our bodies. And so we're actually using whole vitamin C, which comes from a registered trademark polyphenol C, and that includes non-GMO ascorbic acid and all of its synergists, so the polyphenols, the bioflavonoids, everything that you actually need so that your body can process it. The studies have shown us that you can't actually process more than about 400 grams of ascorbic acid, but you can process almost twice that if it's in its bioavailable form with all of the bioflavonoids and polyphenols. And so that's what we actually have in our Restore. When we get into the B vitamins, most folks are taking B vitamins for energy, right? When you think about taking supplements, you want to take those for energy. Well, the challenge is when we take those vitamins, our bodies are going to have to do some work to help figure out how they can convert those and translate those into energy. And if those vitamins are not phosphorylated or methylated, our body's going to have to go through several extra steps, use more energy to actually gain some energy. So sometimes there's a net loss or a negative effect that can come with that. So we want to make sure that everything is in its natural form. And so it's bioavailable, the easiest form for the body to use, and that it's either phosphorylated or methylated. And we want these B vitamins because they play critical roles in our biochemistry and everyday life, right? So they help dramatically with energy production. They help regulate stress and mood management. They help with blood cell creation and brain function. They help with our cardiovascular health. The challenge is the studies have shown us that about 50% of Americans have a difficult time with B vitamins. In other words, they don't methylate well. And so they might have an MTHFR SNP. And when you say that there are a lot of studies that say that supplements don't work and vitamins don't work, the answer is yes, that's true. The majority of them don't work, and that's because they're synthetic. Our bodies can't process them, and then it turns into expensive and colorful and smelly urine. So when we think about vitamins and minerals, the body has to use its resources to convert whatever we put into that. And if it's synthetic or non-biological, it has to do more work. So we want to make sure that it's in that form that our bodies can process. When we're stressed out, when we're not eating the appropriate nutrients in our food, then we're not able to get that. And so then we take some additional supplementation. We want to make sure that it's in the right forms. When we dive in and we start talking about cost, these are updated costs for our most recent batch of Restore. So when we're looking at costs and synthetic versus natural and biological, so we have vitamin B1, that's thiamine mononitrate or the thiamine hydrochloride. There's a HCl, two things that you want to look for when you're actually looking for synthetic products to see if they are methylated. If you remember the last slide, you'll see phosphorylated or methylated would be the natural version. So we have $81 a kilo or $2,100 a kilo. We're actually putting in the Benfopure at the benfotiamine. The B2, which is the riboflavin hydrochloride, there's that HCl again, or we have the riboflavin 5-phosphate, $92, $418. The niacin or niacinamide, which then has to go from nicotinamide, then to NAD, then to NAD+, adds a couple of hydrogens, then ends up at NADH. So when we talk about methylated formula, this is the fast pass, right? So we're saving your body 4 extra steps that happen to happen millions of times in our body in the bioavailable or the methylated form. You have to pay a little bit more for that. We pay a little bit more for that. Most people can actually process niacin, but we want to make sure that we're giving it to you so you don't have to do the extra 4 steps each time. That's the message that we can give when we're actually talking to our customers. If we move on down, we have folic acid at $25 a kilogram, or the methylated version, which is a 5-MTHF. We're using Metafolin as a registered trademark. That's $19,680 a kilogram. This is what we're using in Restore. When we talk about the cyanocobalamin, or the synthetic version of B12, and then the methylated version, we're actually using 2 forms, the methylcobalamin and the dinosocobalamin. So there are a couple of things that we want to pay attention to in the right forms and the right form factors so that the bodies will be able to process. And again, these are all things that we're actually putting in our normal Restore, not the professional version. So when we take a look at our methylation cycle, at each point and each critical point in intersection in this process. So if you look in the center of the screen, you'll see MTHFR. Just above that, you'll see that NADH. That's where the niacin would come in 4 steps down the line. The MTHFR is where we're going to see that MTHFR SNP, where you hear folks that'll talk about not methylating well. So anything that you would see on the opposite, just to the left of the screen of the MTHFR, anything on that cog or the following cog. So if we take a look over, let's see if I can get my mouse to work. If we take a look over on the far left of the screen, we have the arginine to the nitric oxide synthase down to nitric oxide and citrulline. If we don't methylate well, neither of those cogs are probably going to work very well. And that's what the challenge is. So we want to make sure that we're actually able to give you the form that your body can process in each one of these critical junctions. And that's what we have in Restore. And that's kind of the takeaway from this. So when you look at the back of Restore and you see all of the specific ingredients that are labeled and listed on Restore, the reason there are so many ingredients is because they're critical processes in this methylation cycle, and we want to make sure that we're able to give you the best form for each one of those. You say, okay, Scott, that's fantastic, but I'm just going to go out and go buy what I want. I'll buy it in the methylated form. That's fantastic. Great. By all means, feel free to do so. The challenge is cofactors matter. So you want to make sure that you're able to get it in the right form factor. In January 2020, the FDA changed its regulations for percentages of daily value. And they started to get a lot closer to what Dr. Tennant felt was appropriate for daily value that he came out with 5 years ago. And we said, well, wait a minute, do we still want to be 2,000% of the daily value, or do we want to actually figure out what the studies say? So we went back and we looked at what the study said, but it was an interesting exercise because we said, okay, well, do we really need 10,000 units of vitamin D3? And the professional, here's one of those distinguishing things. The professional has 10,000 units of vitamin D3. Daily maintenance suggests 5,000 units of vitamin D3 as cholecalciferol in the current studies. And then for additional immune support, up to $10,000, up to 10,000 international units or 250 micrograms are good for immune support. And those are the two levels that are actually suggested. So he said, well, those are the levels that we had 5 years ago. Those are the levels we're going to currently stick with. Because if we actually add more vitamin D3, we're going to have to add more K2, and then we'll have to add more calcium to figure out how we can balance that out. So kind of an interesting backstory on the production side of it and what we were actually looking at with some of the FDA's changes. Now, Restore actually contains 5,000 international units, and what you'll see that listed or labeled as 125 micrograms. Now, if you have an old version, it'll say international units. If you're looking at the new ones and you're like, well, wait a minute, what happened? We had 5,000, now we only have 125. It's the same amount. Granted, we haven't changed anything, but we want you to know that the FDA's reporting standards and reporting values have changed. And so that's what we're actually looking at. So we want D3 because it actually promotes mineral absorption, calcium absorption, right? Helps transport calcium directly to the bones. It's important for immune support and cardiovascular support. The interesting thing is we also need calcium. And if we take calcium without D3, you actually have to take 20 times the amount of calcium for it to be bioavailable. And so we want to make sure that when we're actually taking calcium, that we're taking calcium and D3 together. And then if we're taking calcium and D3, we want to make sure that we're also taking K2, because K2, vitamin D3 helps calcium absorb and it sends it to the bones. Vitamin K2 actually helps keep it out of the veins and arteries. And so it'll help us keep nice, healthy hearts. And there was a study called the Rotterdam study. There's almost 5,000 subjects. It was 4,800 subjects. They were 55 years and older. They studied them for over 10 years. What they found was that the folks who took calcium by themselves ended up with a 30% increase of atherosclerosis or calcification of the veins. And the folks who actually took K2 saw little to no change. I mean, it was negligible and down to percentage of error. So if we take calcium and K2 at the same time, we know that we're going to be able to maintain healthy heart health. But we also need D3 in the same thing. So when we talk about a comprehensive and synergistic formula, that's exactly what we're talking about. Non-GMO. So if we think back to the phosphorylated and methylated slide and why we would actually need B vitamins, there's a little line at the bottom that said, well, we actually have to use all of our resources, enzymes, ATP, enzymes, and substrates to be able to process things. And the majority of the fatty acids that we're using that are available out on the market, a little over 95% of them are based from soy. And soy is a GMO crop. And when we dive into the GMOs and our bodies can't process them, it's going to leave some additional substances that are hanging on. And we want to make sure that we're not actually providing you with any of those, so your body can actually use everything that it needs to. There's, a little to no waste, and then you can move forward. So we use sunflowers because we can actually trace them. We know that they're non-GMO from point A to point B, point C, all the way through to our production. And so that we can make sure that we can give you the best quality fatty acids and phospholipids. We need these fatty acids and phospholipids to help build out the outside of the cells. And so we're using phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylinositol, and some plant-based fatty acids. And we're doing this because our cells need them to help regulate the nutrients that are coming in and out of the cell walls. And so when you look at a lot of nutrient powders and you look at a lot of nutrient shakes, you don't find a lot of phospholipids. And one of the things that you don't find is phosphatidylcholine. Part of the reason is because it's expensive. But the other thing is that, folks aren't really looking for phospholipids. Practitioners are looking for phospholipids. And we know that the phosphatidylcholine can also help with not only cell production, but it also helps with liver health. And so we're actually using the phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylanoxetol, and then when we look at our essential fatty acids, we're actually using sunflower-based lecithin, which is critical for supporting not only liver support and helping to support a fatty liver and some of that detox, but it's for emulsifying a fatty liver, but it's also critical for supporting new healthy cells and brain function. And when we break things down, we know that a third of the brain is comprised of lecithin in the dry weight. So if we're giving that to you in a non-GMO format, you're going to be able to absorb all of that without anything extra that's hanging out that you'll have to detox at a later date. The other thing that's interesting about this is about a year ago, we actually went through and we said, well, wait a minute, we were using our mixed tocopherols as a vitamin E. And the studies have all shown that mixed tocopherols are a great vitamin E. The challenge is now there are some new studies out that say, well, maybe mixed tocopherols aren't so good. And so we started to dive into that, and we realized that delta gold tocotrienols could be traced from point A to point B to point C all the way through to production. And they were clinically shown to be about 50 times more bioavailable than our mixed tocopherols. So we thought, okay, well, are there any clinical studies? Well, it turns out there are over 100 clinical studies on these specifically. And practitioners are now even saying that if you are recovering from a virus that might actually attack the cardiovascular system or the pulmonary system, increasing your levels of vitamin E with tocotrienols from the annatto plant are one of the best ways that you can actually recover and help recover some of the cardiovascular loss or some of the pulmonary damage that may have happened from that. So it's pretty interesting when we take a look at all of that. So we made the switch and we said, okay, well, wait, it's more bioavailable. We can actually trace it from point A to point B. It falls in line with that. And that's one of the reasons why we've actually done that. Again, this is not we're not talking about Restore Professional. We're talking about Restore here. All right, glutathione. So now we're talking about a little bit of liver support and the liver function. So glutathione is something that the body actually creates. Not everybody produces it really well, and so we want to make sure that we're actually able to give you some additional glutathione. Glutathione is a master antioxidant and detoxifier in the body, and so we're actually going to give you the best version that we've been able to find, which is bioavailable, and that's the Cetria glutathione. A couple of things that I also want to point out when we start talking about energy. So folks are taking vitamins because they want to feel better and they want to feel that energy boost, right? If it's that B12, vitamin B12 shot from the dollar store, or, the additional B vitamins that you're going to get from Whole Foods, we're taking that, and the thought and the prompt to actually make that purchase is because we want energy. We want to feel better. We want to be able to feel like we have the ability to keep up. And there are some products that help with that. One of those is NADH. That's a licensed nutraceutical. Again, this is that niacin, several steps down the line. Some folks actually refer to this as the spark plug for energy production, but it works really, really well at increasing the production of ATP, which is the cell's major energy currency. And it's a really, really good and potent biological antioxidant. CoQ10. CoQ10 is essential for mitochondrial performance and optimizing that mitochondrial performance. Again, specifically targeting energy and providing, the least additional damage when we're actually looking at that. Panthenol. So this is one of those registered trademarks. This is a pharmaceutical grade pantothenic acid that we are using to help release energy from fats. So it really helps with anti-stress. It helps with adrenal support. It's a fantastic thing for energy across the board and really managing the stress overload as well. Malic acid, right? This is, some folks use it as apple acid. If you look at a sucker, you'll actually see malic acid if it's apple flavor. Oftentimes, because it kind of gives you that like citrus, or not citrus, but like sour apple taste. And this helps the ATP process move in a much more efficient manner. So when we take a look at all of these things, we're not talking about Restore Professional. We're talking about Restore. When we look at the actual amounts and quantities and volumes that we're actually putting in here, it's at 100% or significantly more than 100% of the recommended daily value for the FDA. And this is with General Restore, right? It's designed to specifically target and support your immune system. We looked at the vitamin C. That's in its most bioavailable form. Zinc, we're at 100% of the daily value. Same thing with selenium, it's just over that. D3, like I mentioned, still at that daily maintenance level. K2 is actually just over the daily maintenance level that we need to process B3. The methylated B vitamins, and the list goes on and on, but the things that we've actually talked about here. The one thing that I want to stress is that this is Restore in its best format, and it doesn't have the hormones. It's incredibly robust, and it's absolutely fantastic. My wife, who actually just gave birth to our newest addition to the family, our little Clyde is 4 weeks old now, was taking this as a prenatal. And I had 4 different OBs that said this is be amazing prenatal across the board. So I am not advocating that this is, an incredible prenatal, but we do have several practitioners that were saying, hey, look, like this is good for pediatrics. This is good for kids. Like everything's in an amazing form. It's an incredibly robust product across the board. So when we're looking at things, we're trying to flip the mindset and thinking about, okay, well, which Restore is really right for you? Well, are you stressed out? You have somebody who's critically ill. Do they need some additional hormone support? Do they need additional immune boost, right? Do they have any issues with colostrum? Do they have any issues with lactate? Do they have any issues with whey? Chances are, even if they do, they're probably not going to have an issue with the Restore Pro Whey product, but they may benefit from some of that additional support. If they don't want anything to do with dairy, no problem. We still have a professional that's going to give you some additional methylation support in addition to all of the methylated vitamins. And that's our professional veggie. And then we have our Restore, which is what we've been talking about this entire time. It's incredibly robust. It's 22 grams of protein. Has comprehensive vitamins and minerals, a diverse amino acid profile. It's one of the most...
Okay, so to wrap things up, when we're taking a look at this, let's see here. And everybody can see my screen? Awesome. So all that to say that Restore Non-Professional is a comprehensive professional grade, even though it's not a Restore Professional. We're still using professional grade products, and nutraceutical grade product. So it gives you everything that your cells need to work with no preservatives, no fillers, non-GMO, no soy, everything in its methylated form and the purest on the planet.